Dante Romano kept his eyes closed in the chair beside his daughter's bed, but he was not asleep. He had learned to breathe slowly enough to fool most people. Years of negotiations, threats, and guarded meetings had taught him how to remain still while listening to every sound in a room. Tonight, the sound he cared about was his daughter's breathing. Ivy sat upright beneath the covers, both lamps burning, the bedroom door wide open. 10 months had passed since the fire that killed her mother, but darkness still made her 7-year-old body tighten, as if smoke were already pressing beneath the door. Nora Hayes, the new babysitter, did not tell her to be brave. She sat on the carpet, rolled up the sleeve of her cardigan, and revealed a pale burn scar along her left forearm. Ivy stared. Did the fire do that? Yes. Were you scared? Terrified. Ivy reached out with one finger and touched the edge of the scar. Nora's voice stayed soft. Being afraid didn't mean I stayed broken. A few minutes later, Ivy lay down and placed her hand inside Nora's, her eyes closed. Dante remained motionless. Money, guards, doctors, and every light in the mansion had failed to give his daughter one peaceful night. A scar had helped her trust a stranger. Before we return to the beginning, tell us where you are watching from. Subscribe. And stay with this story to see why the man who spent his life watching everyone eventually learned to stop hiding behind an open door. 5 days earlier, Dante Romano stood in a warehouse office overlooking the Brooklyn docks while 2 men waited for his decision. He wore a charcoal suit and the expression that had ended arguments across the city. Below the windows, containers moved across the wet docks. Dante controlled shipping firms, construction companies, and private security contracts. People feared his patience more than another man's temper. At home, none of that mattered. His daughter had not slept through the night since the fire. Ivy was 7, small for her age, with straight black hair that brushed her shoulders and gray eyes like Dante's. She carried an orange stuffed fox everywhere, its left ear badly repaired after she had torn it during one of her nightmares. 10 months earlier, Dante's wife, Lucia, had taken Ivy to the family's country house for a quiet weekend. An electrical fault started a fire after midnight. Ivy was carried out by a groundskeeper. Lucia never came out. Dante arrived after the flames had already reached the roof. Since then, Ivy refused to sleep alone. She kept every lamp on, panicked at alarms, and woke crying whenever a door closed too firmly. Most nights she fell asleep from exhaustion in Dante's office, while he pretended to read reports beside her. He responded the only way he knew. He added cameras to the hallways. He replaced the alarm system. He installed emergency lighting beneath every handrail and ordered guards to check the electrical panels twice each night. The mansion became brighter, quieter, and more controlled. Ivy became more afraid. 3 babysitters left within 6 months. One tried to force her to remain in a darkened room because a specialist had recommended gradual exposure. Another promised nothing bad would ever happen again. Ivy stopped speaking to her after that. Teresa Marino, the house manager, who had served the Romano family for nearly 30 years, finally challenged Dante. The next person needs to understand frightened children, she said, not frightened employers. Dante ignored the insult. If this fails, she goes to the residential program. Teresa's mouth tightened. She is 7. She needs help we are not giving her. She needs a father who is not treating bedtime like a security breach. Dante looked at her until most people would have lowered their eyes. Teresa did not. The following morning, Nora Hayes arrived beneath a gray sky with one suitcase and a folded blue coat over her arm. She was 30, with a full figure, warm brown eyes, and thick auburn hair tied low at her neck. A long cardigan covered both arms despite the warm weather. At the front entrance, one of the guards glanced at her, then at the stairs rising through the center of the mansion. "She knows the job includes nights?" he asked Teresa. Nora answered before Teresa could. "I know children sleep at night when they feel safe." The guard smiled without warmth. "This one doesn't. Then I suppose that is why you need someone." Teresa hid the beginning of a smile and led her inside. The house looked less like a home than a hotel, waiting for guests who never arrived. Lamps burned in every hallway, even at noon. Doors remained open. Smoke detectors had been removed from the corridor nearest Ivy's room, because the sight of them made her anxious. Nora noticed, but she did not begin with questions about the fire. What helps her calm down? She asked. Her father. What makes things worse? People touching her without warning. Loud bells. Closed doors. Anyone saying she has nothing to fear. Nora nodded. Teresa glanced at her. Most people ask how to make her obey. I'm not here to win an argument with a 7-year-old. They found Ivy in the library, sitting on the floor with the orange fox. A picture book lay open, but the child was watching the doorway instead of reading. Nora did not walk straight toward her. She stopped several feet away and looked at the fox. His ear is crooked. Ivy covered it with one hand. I fixed it. You did better than I would. You don't know how to sew? I know how to make stitches. I never said they would be pretty. Ivy studied her. Nora sat in a nearby chair and took a small sewing kit from her bag. She did not reach for the toy. If he ever wants another repair, you can tell me. He's a fox. Then he can tell you, and you can tell me. Nora repaired a loose button on her cardigan while Ivy pretended not to watch. When Nora stood, Ivy spoke. You can stay in here. It was not trust, but it was permission. Dante returned home shortly before dinner and found Nora at the far end of the dining room, while Ivy ate beside Teresa. He examined the new employee as if she were applying for access to one of his warehouses. You worked in private homes before? Yes. You have no clinical training. No. My daughter has seen specialists. I assumed so. They have given clear recommendations. I will follow them. Dante waited for an explanation of what Nora believed she could do better. She offered none. You are here to supervise her, he said. You will not discuss the fire unless she asks. You will not make promises. You will not change her schedule without permission. Nora nodded. Will she be allowed to choose small things inside the schedule, such as how open the door stays, which lamp remains on, whether I sit by the bed or outside it? Dante's gaze sharpened. She needs consistency. She can have consistency in choices. He disliked the calm certainty in her voice because it sounded too close to disagreement. You have 1 week. Nora glanced toward Ivy. Then we should not waste the first night. At bedtime, Nora led Ivy upstairs without mentioning sleep. She placed the orange fox on the bed and looked around the brightly lit room. Do you want the door open all the way or halfway? All the way. All right. Both lamps are one. Both. All right. Ivy looked suspicious. You're not going to turn them off after I close my eyes? No. You could lie. I could. But then tomorrow would be harder for both of us. Nora sat near the doorway instead of beside the bed. Ivy climbed beneath the covers, then climbed out again. When the old hallway clock chimed, she dropped to the floor and crawled beneath the table. Teresa moved toward her. Nora raised one hand. She sat outside the table and placed the orange fox between them. I know a fox who hid in a hollow tree, she said. Then he discovered squirrels already lived there and charged rent. A gray eye appeared beneath the tablecloth. How much? 3 acorns. That's not terrible. It is if you have no pockets. Ivy stayed beneath the table, but her breathing slowed. Nora did not ask her to come out. After several minutes, Ivy crawled toward the fox, took it, and sat against the bed. She did not sleep in the bed that night. She fell asleep on the carpet, while Nora remained near the open door. Before closing her eyes, Ivy whispered, "Don't leave before I'm asleep. I won't leave before you're asleep tonight." Ivy noticed the final word. Tonight? I do not make forever promises at bedtime. The next morning, Dante learned Ivy had slept on the floor. He considered it another failure. Nora considered it one night without screaming. At breakfast, she did not announce the improvement. She buttered toast, repaired the fox's second ear, and asked Ivy whether she preferred strawberry jam or honey. Dante watched from the doorway. His daughter chose honey. Dante could not remember the last time Ivy had been asked to choose before 3 adults decided what was best. The second night went worse. Dante entered the room before bedtime and sat in the heavy chair beside the window. I will stay, he told Ivy. Her shoulders relaxed immediately. Nora saw the change and also saw the cost. Ivy did not look at the bed, the lamps, or the door. She watched her father, measuring every breath and movement. After several minutes, Nora spoke quietly. Would you try sitting outside for 5 minutes? Dante turned toward her. No. She needs to know you can leave and return. She needs to know I am here. She already knows you are here. She does not know she can be safe when you are not in the chair. Dante's face hardened. This is not a discussion. Nora did not argue in front of Ivy. That night, the child curled on the floor beside Dante's shoes and slept with one hand wrapped around his trouser leg. In the morning, Nora found Ivy drawing at the breakfast table. 3 black houses filled the page. Every window was yellow. Nora sat opposite her. What scares you most at night? Ivy kept drawing. The dark? A sound? Waking up and finding no one? The crayon stopped. Ivy looked at the sleeve covering Nora's left arm. Were you ever in a fire? Nora's hand went still. Yes. Ivy waited. Nora did not roll up the sleeve. You can ask me again when you want the answer. The child returned to the drawing, but she changed one window from yellow to blue. Dante heard about the question from Teresa. That evening, he took his place in the chair again. This time, he intended to discover what Nora would say when she believed he could not hear. He closed his eyes. Ivy sat beneath the covers with every lamp on. Nora placed 2 books on the bed. True story or made-up story? True. Nora looked toward Dante. His breathing remained slow. She moved to the edge of the bed and pulled back the sleeve of her cardigan. The pale scar ran from her wrist toward her elbow. Ivy's eyes widened. Did the fire do that? Yes. Did your house burn? An apartment. I was 12. Did your mom die? No, my brother and I got out. My mother was working. Ivy touched the blanket but not Nora's arm. Were you scared? Terrified. You don't look scared. That is because we are sitting in a bedroom, not inside the fire. Ivy looked toward the lamps. Do you sleep with lights? I did for a long time. All of them? Every light I could find. I once slept with the bathroom light, hallway light, kitchen light, and television on. Did everyone get mad? Some people told me I had to be brave. Were you? No. I was tired. Ivy's mouth trembled. Nora lowered her voice. Healing didn't erase what happened. It taught me that fear could visit without owning the whole night. Ivy reached out. Can I touch it? Yes. One finger rested against the scar. Does it hurt? Not now. Did it before? Yes. Ivy moved closer. Nora did not embrace her. She waited until the child placed her hand into hers. Can the light stay on? Yes. Can the door stay open? Yes. Can you stay until I sleep? Yes. Tonight. Ivy lay down. Nora remained beside her, one hand resting beneath the child's fingers. Minutes passed. Ivy's breathing softened. Dante opened his eyes. Nora looked at him, and for a moment neither spoke. There was no triumph in her face. She simply looked back at Ivy. Dante had spent 10 months trying to prove there was nothing left to fear. Nora had done the opposite. She had admitted fear was real and still survivable. He rose without waking his daughter. At the door, he stopped beside Nora. You knew I was awake. After she asked about my mother. Why did you continue? Because she was the one asking. That answer followed him down the hallway. The next night, Dante did not pretend to sleep. He stood at the doorway while Nora asked Ivy which lamp should be turned off first. None, Ivy said. Then none. The following night, Ivy chose the lamp near the window. Nora switched it off and asked her to name 3 things she could still see. My fox, the door, Dad's shadow. Dante looked down at the dark shape cast across the carpet. Ivy added, it's too big. For the first time in months, Dante smiled. Over the next several days, the progress came in small pieces. Ivy began eating breakfast before school, instead of sleeping late after a restless night. Nora cut toast into uneven stars. Ivy corrected the points with a child-safe knife and informed her that stars had 5 sides, not 7. Dante entered the kitchen while Ivy was finishing a second slice. I slept in my bed, she told him. He almost said, can you do it again tonight? Instead, he sat across from her. I'm glad you rested. Nora glanced at him. Dante understood the approval in her glance and wanted to earn another. During the day, Nora took Ivy into the bedroom while sunlight filled the windows. They drew a map on a large sheet of paper, the bed, the door, the window, the switches, the space beneath the table, the orange fox at the end of the blanket. What is this? Nora asked, pointing to a black shape Ivy had drawn beside the wardrobe. Smoke. Is there smoke there now? No. What is there now? A coat. Nora did not erase the smoke. She drew the outline of the coat beside it. The memory can stay on the page, she said. We can also mark what is here today. Ivy closed the bedroom door for 10 seconds. Then she opened it herself. Tomorrow. Maybe 20. Maybe. That evening, she asked Dante to sit outside the door. His first instinct was to refuse. Nora was arranging the fox at the foot of the bed. Do you want her to need you in the chair? She asked. Or trust that you will come if she calls? Dante looked at Ivy. Outside, Ivy said, but not far. He placed the chair in the hallway. The door remained open. 5 minutes later, Ivy called, Dad, I'm here. He did not enter. Another 10 minutes passed. Dad, I'm here. The third time, she did not call. Dante remained in the hall after Ivy fell asleep. Nora stepped out and closed her book. You can go, she whispered. He looked into the room. What if she wakes? Then you come back. The simplicity of it unsettled him. You trust that. I practice it. Dante stood. Their shoulders nearly touched in the narrow doorway. Nora moved first, leaving enough space for him to pass. It was not romance. Still, Dante noticed the faint scent of soap on her cardigan and the way she spoke more softly after Ivy slept. He began returning home earlier. He told himself it was because the child's routine required consistency. Teresa did not challenge the lie. One evening, Dante found Nora alone in the kitchen, wrapping a strip of cloth around the repaired ear of the orange fox. Ivy said you were 12, he said. Nora tied the knot. When the fire happened. Yes, what happened after? Not much worth turning into a speech. Dante leaned against the counter, waiting. Nora sighed. My brother and I got out. I burned my arm on a metal railing. For months, every sound in the hallway woke me. Did your mother help? She tried. Everyone tried. They kept calling me brave. That was wrong? It became wrong when I felt I had to protect them from knowing I was still afraid. She placed the fox on the table. The scar was easier than the fear. People could see the scar. Dante looked at her arm. Lucia called me that night. Nora said nothing. I was in a meeting. I saw her name. I thought I would call back in 10 minutes. His voice remained controlled, but his fingers pressed into the edge of the counter. By the time I called, someone else answered. Nora did not offer the empty comfort that the call would have changed nothing. You're trying to protect Ivy from the night you could not change, she said. Dante looked toward the dark hallway. If I had answered, you do not know, no. And because you do not know, you keep trying to know everything now. He met her eyes. Most people softened their words around Dante Romano. Nora did not make them cruel. She simply did not hide them. Does that frighten you? He asked. Your power, my anger, sometimes. The honesty surprised him. Yet you stay. Ivy asked me to. And if I ask? Nora's expression changed, just slightly. You have not decided what you are asking for. Before he could answer, Ivy called from upstairs. Both moved at once. Then Nora stopped. She called you, she said. Dante went alone. For 3 nights, Ivy slept, with one large lamp and the small lamp beside the bed. On the 4th, she switched off the larger one herself. Dante remained outside the door. Nora sat at the end of the hallway, mending the fox. The house seemed to breathe differently. Then, the storm arrived. Thunder rolled over the city after midnight. Rain struck the windows in hard waves. The backup generators had been tested that morning. Dante was across town when lightning hit a transformer near the estate. Every light went out. The mansion dropped into complete darkness. Ivy screamed. Nora was halfway up the stairs before the second cry. She found the child in the hallway beneath a narrow table, knees pulled to her chest, the orange fox crushed against her face. The emergency lights should have activated. They did not. Nora knelt several feet away. Ivy, it's me. No, I won't touch you. Make it stop. I can't stop the storm. The child sobbed harder. Nora kept her voice steady. Tell me one thing you can feel. No. The floor is cold under my knees. Is it cold under yours? A pause. Yes. One thing you can hold. Fox. One thing you can hear that belongs to now. Ivy shook beneath the table. Nora waited. Your voice, the child whispered. That's right. My voice is here now. Lightning flashed through the windows. Ivy cried out but did not run. Nora stayed where she was. "The lights will come back," she said. "Until then, I will keep talking." The generator finally started 4 minutes later. Warm light filled the corridor. Ivy remained beneath the table, exhausted and crying. When Dante reached the top of the stairs, he saw his daughter on the floor. He saw Nora several feet away. The storm, the darkness, and Lucia's unanswered call collided inside him before reason could catch up. "What happened?" "The emergency lights failed," Nora said. "You left her alone?" "No. She is under a table." She chose the place that felt safest. Dante dropped to one knee. "Ivy, come to me." The child crawled into his arms. Her body shook against him. Dante looked at Nora over Ivy's head. She was safer when every light stayed on. Nora's face tightened. She was awake until exhaustion. That was not safety. "This is not the time." "No, this is exactly the time. A setback does not mean everything before it was wrong." She was screaming in the dark because the power failed without warning. "You pushed her too quickly." "I did not turn off the electricity." "You taught her she could handle this." "I taught her fear could pass." Dante heard only the crying in his arms. "You are done." Nora went still. Teresa appeared at the end of the hall but did not interrupt. "Dante," Nora said carefully, "you are frightened. My daughter is frightened. Both can be true. Pack your things. You leave in the morning." He did not shout. The words came low and clipped, shaped by panic. Regret crossed his face at once. Nora saw it. She did not use it to win. "All right," she said. Dante carried Ivy to his room and turned on every lamp. The child did not sleep. Neither did he. By morning, Nora's suitcase stood beside the front door. She folded the cardigan over one arm, leaving the scar uncovered. Teresa held the orange fox, which Ivy had dropped in the hallway. "You could wait until he calms down," Teresa said. "He has to choose to calm down. I cannot do it for him." Dante entered the foyer. Nora faced him. "You keep trying to build a world where Ivy never feels afraid," she said. "She needs to learn that fear can arrive and still leave again." "I will not gamble with my daughter." "I never asked you to." "You said she could handle the night." "I said she would not face it alone." Dante's expression shifted, but the habit of control remained stronger. Nora took her suitcase. "I hope you hear the difference." She left. The house returned to its old brightness. Dante ordered the emergency system replaced before noon. He added portable lamps to Ivy's room and instructed 2 guards to remain in the hallway. Ivy refused to enter Dante's bedroom. She sat on the staircase with the orange fox and stared at the front door. "Nora left," Dante said. "You made her. She put you in danger." "No, you were terrified." "She never said the dark was safe." Dante stopped. Ivy's small fingers tightened around the fox. "She said I wouldn't be alone." The words landed with the force of a verdict. Dante sat on the step below her. "You were crying." "I cried before Nora came." He looked at his daughter. "Do you think last night means you failed?" Ivy frowned. "No. Why not?" The lights broke. Dante lowered his head. The child understood what he had not. The power failure was frightening. It did not erase the nights she had slept, the door she had closed, or the lamp she had chosen to turn off. He had turned one terrible night into proof that nothing could change. Ivy looked toward the front door. "Bring her back." Dante did not send a driver. He took his own car. Nora waited beneath the roof of a small bus terminal, her suitcase beside her, and rain darkening the pavement beyond the glass. When Dante entered, she did not appear surprised. Ivy asked for you," he said. "That is not why you came." "No." Nora waited. Dante had apologized when contracts required it. He had never admitted that fear had made him wrong. "I saw her beneath the table and I was back at the country house," he said. "I blamed you because I could not blame the storm." Nora's face softened, but she did not rescue him from the rest. "I tried to control what happened next. I did not listen to either of you. No, I am sorry." The station speaker announced a delayed bus. Dante looked at her suitcase. "Come back, not because I am ordering you. Come back if you believe I can learn not to decide everything for her." "And for me?" He met her eyes. "For you too." Nora picked up the suitcase. That evening, No one asked Ivy to repeat the night she had managed before the storm. Nora treated the setback as a place to begin, not a punishment. Ivy chose both lamps. Dante sat in the hallway where she could see him. Nora sat beside the bed. The door remained fully open. After several minutes, Ivy pointed toward the large lamp. That one. Nora switched it off. The smaller lamp cast a warm circle across the blanket. Ivy looked at Nora's uncovered arm. "Can I touch it?" "Yes." Her hand moved forward, then stopped. "I don't need to tonight." Nora smiled. "All right." Ivy tucked the fox beneath her chin. She looked toward Dante. "You can go to your room." He did not move immediately. "I know where you are," she said. Dante stood. "Call me if you want me." "I will." He walked away from the doorway. Not far, not yet. But far enough for Ivy to choose sleep without watching his every breath. The next morning, Dante carried the heavy chair from outside her room. Nora found him in the dining room, placing it beside the long breakfast table. "What are you doing? It has been in the hallway for 10 months. And now?" "Now it belongs somewhere people sit together." He pulled the chair out for her. Weeks passed. Ivy continued sleeping in her own room with one small lamp. Some nights she called Dante once. On difficult nights, she asked Nora to sit beside her until her breathing slowed. No one called those nights failures. The alarms returned with gentler tones. Ivy practiced hearing them during daylight. The first time, she cried. The second time, she stayed. Progress remained uneven and real. Nora stayed. Her scar no longer needed to be hidden beneath long sleeves. Ivy sometimes asked about it. Most days, she did not notice it at all. One Sunday morning, Nora placed toast and fruit on the table, then stepped back out of habit. Dante pulled out the chair beside him. "Sit with us." She looked at him. He added, "And stay after she no longer needs a babysitter." Ivy's face brightened. She placed the orange fox in the empty chair between them, as if it had already voted. Nora sat down. Sunlight crossed the table and rested on the scar along her arm. No one looked at it as proof that she had been ruined. It was only evidence that something painful had happened, and that life had continued without requiring her to pretend the pain had never existed. Sometimes healing does not remove fear. Sometimes it gives fear a smaller place to sit. And sometimes love begins not with a promise, but with a person who stays close, tells the truth, and waits to be invited nearer. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts below, subscribe, and join us for another story of hope, dignity, and healing.